One. All right. Thanks for watching A to the Show, the most international educational entertainment podcast. Welcome to the show, Sonny Lawrence. Really appreciate your time here today. And Sonny, you just came off the 100 triathlon races. Do you want to tell us about um, project and how to even get started and how it feels now that you've achieved it?
You bet. So my husband is known as the Iron Cowboy, and he holds several world records in triathlon. And in 2015, he did the 50-50-50, which was 50 full distance triathlons through 50 states in 50 days. Well, after accomplishing that, we had a few, years to rest and catch our breath, and we were kind of entertaining some new projects. And he had the thought, if I could pull that 50 off with all the chaos and the drama, what would I be capable of if we removed the chaos? And so the idea and the concept of the Conquer 100 was born. And this is where we did 100 full distance triathlons. This is what the brand Ironman is famous for, is the same distance. 100 full distance triathlons in 100 days, but we did them all right here from our home just south of Salt Lake City, Utah. So the idea with that was to see what would happen if we removed the chaos. When he speaks from stage, he talks about how everybody's heart is different and we all have to conquer our own hard. And so he said, 75 doesn't scare me, but 100 scares me. So it's time for him to do something hard again. And we hit it March 1st to June 8th.
Wow. I want to know about the number 100. Was that something that, like, kind of you guys was scientifically like, okay, I can do this, my endurance is this, I think I can do 100? Or was it just this is the number and it was more like a mental feat to conquer that?
It's more the mental feat, right? It was
Yeah.
double what we had done. And when he thought about doing more, they didn't intimidate him at all. It wasn't until he got to 100 that he's like, ooh, 100 would be really intense. And in fact, he ended up doing a bonus day and did 101 because he wanted to be able to teach the lesson that, just when you think you've done all you can do and you've accomplished this amazing feat, there's always still a little bit more in you. So he actually went one more day and did 101.
Wow.
Wow. All right. I don't mean to sound like a psycho, but is there going to be another limit to it? Are you going to go for another one and plan, or are you guys resting? And what's next for an Iron Cowboy?
So there was 6 years in between the 50 and this project.
Right.
So James is 45 now, and he knew his time physically was kind of winding down. So he wanted to do one more big physical project. So I imagine from this point forward, it will be more fun and difficult projects, less torturous.
Yes.
He's a professional speaker. He's been a speaker for about 10 years. He travels all over the world and speaks. He's been to 48 countries. And so now it's a new platform to speak and talk about with new lessons. And that's kind of the next plan. He gets invited to stuff all the time. So he'll pick and choose which events he attends. And, but for now, it's now enjoying the glory of the victory.
Hey, that's awesome. I can't believe it, right? It's like, it's more than just a physical struggle. You were talking about the physical struggle, it's also a mental struggle, right? Can you describe a little bit of what the physical struggle and the mental struggle was during this duration?
It was definitely both. So
Yeah.
he had injuries that surprised him. So right off the bat, just a few days in, he was battling a shin injury and an ankle injury and moved up to a knee and to a hip. And he gutted through these injuries from, I think it was like day 4. And every day was a mental fight. And remember, we're in the Rocky Mountains. And so we started this March 1st knowing that it was going to be over a quarter of a year, no matter what time of year we did it. And so we opted to do it starting March 1st. So we essentially saw 3 seasons of the year. We saw winter with snow and freezing cold temperatures. The day he started, it was 19 degrees. And we did them all outside, including the swim. The swim was outside with a heated pool. And then we saw spring with rain and hail and wind. And then we saw summer towards the end at 96 degrees. So it was incredible to endure something that took so long that we were literally going through the seasons of the year. But mentally, having to keep it together when you have physical ailments, you have the weather's changing. We invited people out every single day so you could join him for whatever portion you wanted to join him. And that camaraderie was really important to him because he wanted to have other people be challenged as well and kind of catch the spirit of doing hard things. And so he would have a mental battle of a really difficult person that joined him for the whole run that he was stuck with for 7 hours, talking to him incessantly as he was fighting through this pain and this misery.
Right.
You have sleep fatigue, you have the mental thoughts that go through your mind, having to keep your mind in the right place. So it was quite the journey. It was quite the journey.
Wow. I mean, on day 4 to have physical injuries, I mean, I think a lot of athletes would just pull back and start a different time, right? Was that ever a thought that happened or a conversation that happened about giving up and starting over later, or
No way.
no way?
No way. Because the thing is the body's designed to heal and adapt. And so we have the power to command our body to heal, and I'm sure people would fly off the handle if they heard me say that and say, oh, I have these injuries I can't fix, But the truth is the body knows how to adapt. I mean, our state is based off of people seeking religious freedom and traveling the country in, the winter with nothing but hand carts and starving. And I mean, those people couldn't just quit. We have to persevere. The state is based off of perseverance. So the body adapted. We adapted. We figured things out. We figured how to treat it, and he learned how to manage it. And over time, those injuries healed and they got better. So it was amazing. And he's never had injuries. He's been an endurance athlete for 17 years, right, and he's never had injuries. So that's the irony in it all.
The irony and the Iron Cowboy.
Exactly.
The Iron Cowboy.
And what does it take to prepare for these kind of events? So first of all, obviously you started preparing for the 50, the 51, and then became 100. So in those 6 years, like what changed in his training and his mental preparations?
Excellent question. So the idea with mental toughness is that it's something that has to be strengthened and built up. People will send emails all the time and say, how do I develop mental toughness, or how do I become mentally tough? But you don't just become mentally tough. It's a practice and exercise, as with anything. So you have to intentionally seek out hard things over time, and then those hard things can get harder and harder and harder, and you can handle it. I mean, there's a lot of talk in the parenting world right now about how we're raising a soft generation, where these kids, coming out of millennials and Gen Z have never really had to do hard things. And now they're facing adulthood and they don't understand, why they're depressed or why they have anxiety, but it's because they lived in a culture where they didn't have to exercise that hard. So that's the whole thing, is you have to build this up. This is a process. And over James's lifetime, he was a wrestler growing up, and mental fortitude is extremely important in wrestling. And so he just had over time built up this mental strength, and he's exercised it, practiced it, and strengthened it. So when it comes to physical preparation, I mean, you can't train or prepare for an event like this. You can't just say, I'm going to go do this and peak and then come back down. That's not the way these types of projects work. So what you do is you kind of train for the first 10, then the next 10 train you for the next 10, and the next turn train you for the next 10. And so by the time you get to the end, you have the fitness to do that, but you didn't have it day one. Right? You gradually build it over, because it was 14 weeks. That's a long time. So he
experiment.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
He built that up over 14 weeks. That was a whole training block in itself. So, practice doing hard things and know how to stress and train the body appropriately. He coaches, and because he had done the 50, we have experience in this. The motive was a little different. It was, we dialed it back because it was 100. For the 50, you could put a little more effort into it because it was less than 2 months. But this time around, it's like we had to dial it way back and think more long term. And I think, there are other things we could have done to prepare, but we actually experimented with a few things that didn't end up working out in our favor, but it didn't matter. He was going to do it no matter.
Yeah. Something also that you're basically what you guys were doing are basically doing an experiment. This is how I would consider it. It's an experiment. You guys are testing new things that
never been done before.
Basically crossing limits and learning about the human limits. So if you can, what have you learned about basically the human limit in endurance?
Well, I know there was a book recently put out about the 4-minute mile and how they said it was impossible to ever do it. It wasn't physically, the human body couldn't do it, and then somebody did it. So I think the interesting thing is that we allow society to tell us where our limits are. We allow society to create the rules. We allow society to assign us what we can and can't do, whether that's based off of, our gender, our education, our socioeconomic status. We allow a society to assign us those. And because we allow them to, we just fall right into place and we do as we're told. So it takes real courage and creativity to say, no, I don't want to do what society told me to do. And you can't tell me that just because I'm a girl, I can't play baseball. I mean, why have we always allowed that? And I don't want to make this about gender, but why have we always allowed that, right? Why have we always said that, lower class people will never make it? They'll never make it to be the president of the United States or any of those things. And, we had a Black president. That was never expected. So the journey with James has always been to defy that. And this project was called Defy Logic. You can't wrap your mind around it. You can't make sense of it. And that was the whole point. The whole point was to say, don't tell me what to do. This is my life. I will choose my own limits. And, coming out of this, he went for the extra 101. He could have kept going. He absolutely could have kept going.
Yeah.
But the truth is, we have a family and we have a life. We have 5 children, we have a life. We're human beings that need to get on with life. And I believe that anybody who was a part of this journey would agree that he most certainly could have kept going. There wasn't a limit. It was just time to end the project. So that's the beautiful thing, is that we get to create our own reality. We get to create our own life, and nobody gets to tell us otherwise. And if they do, we get to choose whether or not we buy into that, or if we ignore it and do what we want anyway.
Well, that's very well put. I agree with you.
I think that's an important message also for all, because a lot of people do a lot of shame and judgment and feel like they can't do what they want to do because other people tell them they can't. But you're telling them they should do what they want to do, regardless of what other people say. I also wanted to comment a bit on, you said that young people are a little softer now because they don't have to do difficult tasks. I think part of that's because we live in a world now where we don't have to do difficult tasks. You can order food on Uber and you don't have to do anything difficult. So why do you choose to do things that are difficult, like exercise, when you don't have to do it, right? And what are the benefits you get from doing it?
And that's exactly it. I mean, you used to have to grow your food and farm it to eat it, or you didn't eat. And now it's like people don't even cook their own food. They don't even want to go to the grocery store and cook it.
They don't even go to the store to get it. Yeah, it comes to them.
I mean, even fast food, it used to be you grab fast food when you were out on the run, you didn't have time and blah, blah. And now it's like, I'm going to sit at home and I'm going to order fast food and it's going to show up at my door. I mean, we live in a different world. And there's nothing wrong with that. As long as you are looking for ways to challenge yourself. You have to, and as you said, you literally have to choose to do hard things because they will not find you. You have to go out and find them. They don't exist if you wait for them to come to you. So you have to pursue that, or you're not going to have that ability to grow and to learn. And, I think about it, a lot of times people want to do these wild and crazy things and they say, I'm going for it. I'm going to stop working and I'm going for it. And that's not what we're encouraging. What we're encouraging is calculated risks with a plan. So when we did the 50, we had lived with a lady who had Alzheimer's and I cared for her for 2 years in exchange for rent and utilities. And we saved all of our money because we didn't know if we were going to get sponsorship for the 50. And we ended up getting sponsorship, but we saved all that money. And then we came home and we were able to have a down payment for a house. And, going into this Conquer 100, we saved, we made calculated risks. I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And so we lived off nothing. So I wouldn't have to work because I wanted to raise my kids myself. And I knew that there would be a career waiting for me afterwards. I was a very young mom. And that was all calculated. It wasn't, hey, we're going to do this thing. We're going to mortgage our house to do it. And we're going for it. That was never the case. And that is certainly not what we're encouraging. So the idea is to seek out hard things that strengthen you, that teach you, that help you grow. And when you take those risks, you think them through and you come up with a plan, a patient plan. Not a plan that's like, well, I want to do this thing. I'm doing it Friday. It's like a patient, calculated plan. And you get the support to do it. And whether that's from friends cheering you on or somebody that's willing to help you finance the project, whatever it is, but you plan for it. So that's the beautiful part, is when people see you're willing to work hard, they'll invest in you and they'll bet on you. even though no one thought we could do it.
Wow, you're right. And like the world comes to you, right? You just have to choose to do something difficult, and people are like, wow, this person's doing something incredible. We should come to them because they are doing something incredible. But it is, so you said it was a calculated risk. What is that? Do you feel the same way about this 100, the 100 triathlons? Was that also very like calculated? Is that why it took time to happen, or why was there time between the previous one and this one?
Good question. We thought that the 50 was the last
Yes.
one. We didn't think there'd be any more. It's like, you don't think there's going to be any more, because that's what life is. We don't know where life is going to take us. And many people know where they're going to be in 6
Very
months.
true.
I don't. James and I never know where we're going to be in 6 months. And that drives me crazy because I like to be organized, but that's who I married. I married somebody who was a dreamer, and I was okay with that. But, I think, what was the original question? How did you pose that?
Why was there time between the two?
Yeah. So I think that James wanted to do the 50 in 2014. And I said, no, we got to do it in 15. There's not enough time. We need the time to plan it. So this time around, with the simplicity of it, we didn't quite need that amount of time. So as soon as we realized we could get sponsorship, it's funny because a lot of the criticism we get is people are like, and how did he pay for this? And his whole family's probably suffering. And I'm like, people, sponsorship, everybody, that's how you do everything in the world.
Right.
Sponsorship. Like, what are people thinking? So as soon as we had sponsorship arranged, not much else took much effort, because it was right here in our hometown. I mean, we didn't need permits. We didn't need any of that thing, because it was just James going out to do this thing, and that the public could join him for any part of it. But it was not an organized event. It wasn't an official event. We were collecting money, a race entry fee or anything. So putting it together was quite simple. So this one did not require as much time. We decided in, I think, August. And then by October, we had talked about moving it up to March. And that's when we decided to move it up to March. Nice. And part of the timing for that, the original plan was because coming off of COVID, everybody was so beaten down last year that James is like, I've got to vamp these people up. I got to wake this world up and make them feel like there's hope again. And then in doing it in March, the world was still kind of shut down. And so it allowed us to kind of vamp people up before we finished. And then the world opened back up by the time we finished, and people could go out there and feel empowered to conquer their own.
Yeah, so, I feel excited now to do something really like that. And so where should people start, right? If someone, 100 triathlons, that's a lot to start off with. So if people do want to start off with the challenge, and what do you recommend?
Well, here's the thing too about that is that James didn't start out with 100 triathlons. He started out with a 4-mile fun run that I signed him up for on Thanksgiving Day that he almost died. And he was 28 years old, and I was like, you're struggling running 4 miles. You need to get it together. So then that led to a marathon, then that led to triathlon, then that led to the half iron distance, then the full distance triathlon. So there was this progression. And then in 2010, he set the world record for the most half distance triathlons. We can't say Ironman because it's a brand. They get mad at us. and in 2012, he did the full. So he did, the record was 20. And in 2012, he did 30 full distance triathlons for that record. So there was this progression of goals, right? And then he did the 50, and then he did the 100. So for people who are starting out, first of all, you got to find something you love or something you're passionate about. It can't just be, oh, well, that guy did that thing, so I'm going to do that thing too. It's got to be something you want to do. And then you start small. You have a patient goal. This was a decade. It was 11 years, 12 years in the making. So you say, okay, I want to do this in 5 years or 10 years. What are the steps to get there? And it's those small, monotonous things that you think are worthless that actually mean something, that build up to something great. So depending on what your goals are, find something tiny and start with that little tiny thing. It's $1 a day. Save $1 a day and you'll be a millionaire, right?
Wow. That's an incredible story. I want to ask you about, a lot of people are very successful and very success driven are often very focused on success and not about the family a lot of the times. But you have 5 kids and you take care of your kids, and you and James go around and do a lot of these adventures together. How important is it to balance the success, right? Because you said you could keep doing triathlons, but there's a family to take care of. And is it difficult to be able to manage the the success and being called all the time to do these events with family time. I don't know if you're fine talking about it. Hear your insights.
It's my favorite topic.
Perfect. Because I think it's important, because we hear like the richest guys, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, they have broken families, and a lot of these, I feel like I don't want to have to choose. If I love my partner, and I also want to be able to do amazing things. So how do we balance it?
So a lot of people are pretty critical of this too, where they say everybody's the expert, right? And they're like, oh, this guy's abandoning his family. And I'm like, you don't even know him. Like, you know his opinions, you don't even know him. The interesting thing is James actually spends a lot of time at home, where he travels for speaking. He'll be gone. After the 50, for the first couple of years, he was pretty busy because he was doing some tours and things. But he's home a lot. And so he's very involved with the kids' lives. He knows their friends. He's very involved. And when he goes away, he only goes away for a night or two. But because he's a professional speaker, his working in between isn't like a traditional job. He's not working 9 to 5.
Right.
So, the thing we used to do when the kids were little is we involved them in everything. So if you were to go back in time and look at our pictures and things in social media and stuff, you'd see the kids were at these races.
Right.
Even when they were little, we would put them, on Sundays, I would rollerblade. I'd put because my first two were only 15 months apart. So I'd put them in a stroller side by side. James would longboard, and we'd go out on these Sunday strolls, and we'd stop by and visit friends. And, we had a bike trailer that we would go biking and take the kids. And, it was important to us to not only include them, but to also honor their interests. So if they weren't interested in the things we weren't interested in, we didn't want to push that on them. In fact, my daughter, Dolly, she's 13. She was hardly around during the 100 because she didn't care about it. She was like, cool, Dad, go do your thing. Like, she didn't care. And I didn't want to make her be a part of it when she didn't care. It's not her jam, So the important part is to involve and engage them where you can, but to still show interest in their world. So it's not about, if you're a stay-at-home mom, which is my realm, and you're on your phone all day and you're at home, that's not quality time. Your face is in your phone, or you're talking to your friends all day and you're ignoring what's going on in the house. There's no pride in that. If your kids are taking care of themselves and you're completely disconnected, versus a mom who's working full time and spends every quality minute with her child that is engaged in their lives.
Right.
Those are different. It's not about
quality, not quantity.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
So James and I have always made sure to know their friends, to know what's going on in their lives. Their friends typically congregate here. They spend a lot of time here at our house, and to do things that are involved in their lives. So attend their lacrosse games and to know their teachers and, be engaged in their life. And then inevitably they become engaged in ours, and they don't just see us as this old mom and dad that are nerdy and whatever. My kids will play cards with me even when they don't want to, because they know it's important to me. And that's really powerful. But the truth is, it requires sacrifice. So if you have to get up early in the morning to feed your hobby, you got to get up early in the morning. If you have to cut work short to spend time with your partner, that's important, to cut your work short to spend time with your partner, because those relationships are the things that you take with you. And, money comes and goes. Ask everybody from the recession in 2008. Money comes and goes. There's no safe investment. There's no, safe savings account. It's like the relationships last forever. So
as if it's not real. Yeah, like money isn't even real, but the people are real.
It's an illusion. It really is. Yeah. Money's an illusion because it does come and go so quickly. We lost everything in the recession in 2008. By 2010, we'd lost our home. We'd lost everything because James was a mortgage broker. And it didn't matter. It didn't matter because we had this family and we had each other, and James and I chose to pull together instead of to create conflict over this hardship. And it paid off big time. And that's what we've always raised our kids, is that we're a team. We work together. We're invested in each other's interests, in each other's lives. And, sometimes there's sacrifice and other times there's not. So family first is what it comes down to. And what James does not take away from the family like it appears it does.
Yeah, that's actually a very, I was listening to that and just like, wow, because family, like maintaining a family while you're pursuing your dream is not an easy thing, because especially in the early years, people just tend to go through a lot of adversity and difficulties, and they find it hard to be able to focus on their relationships and make time for the crucial parts of their lives with the people that they love, because they tend to focus on their careers and neglect everyone else, or like shun people from their lives. So I want to know, is like from your perspective, was it difficult or was it easy in the early years of for James, between you and James, when he was pursuing the dream, and how when you were supporting him for it?
That's a great question. And the truth is that it's only hard if you allow society to culture your life, right?
Yeah.
Because if your boss says you've got to work 60 hours a week or you're fired, then you say, I'm out. You don't let your boss decide how you spend your time. It's your life. So
for sure,
that's when you say, this isn't the job for me. You know, I want something different. So it was very hard when the kids were young, because I had 5 kids in 6 years. So we had them very close together. And James and I both wanted that. I wanted to be a young mom and I wanted to be a young grandmother. I planned on pursuing things in my life later in life, because when you're young, you don't have any money. You know, you're in school and you're fighting for life, trying to figure life out. And I thought, well, let's do that with kids. And then by the time we're established, the kids are older and we can enjoy each other and we can enjoy life. And I'm not saying that's right for everybody, but it was certainly wonderful for us. But it was very hard because I had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to get a workout in, where James had a lot more freedom. And that, I feel like that's common with the mom and the dad, but I had chosen to be a stay-at-home mom, and that's the job I had chosen. And so even in the hardest moments, I was doing what I wanted to do. So when James was pursuing his dreams and things he wanted to do, naturally, that took some sacrifice, but we learned how to balance it. So for instance, we never had daycare or babysitters.
Right.
So I worked the first 5 years we were married till my second daughter was 1, but we worked opposite shifts. So I worked mornings, he worked nights. I worked weekdays, he worked weekends, and we balanced that out. And so we got to hang out on Wednesdays when he had a day off, and we got to hang out on Sunday mornings when he hadn't gone to work yet. So we came up with this really creative way to not have to pay daycare and to raise our own kids and not have to, you know, and some moms like that, and dads, they like that break to send their kids to daycare and have them experience different things, and that's great. That's not what we wanted to do. So we had to sacrifice some things in our marriage, our relationship, to work those opposite shifts, but we always kept it on our mind and we were always conscious about it. So we made sure in those moments we were feeding our relationship as a family as well as a couple, so that we didn't let that slip. And now we've been married 20 years, and we see a lot of our friends, when you're in your 40s, you start to see people's lifestyles catch up with them. In your 20s, everybody's doing drugs and it doesn't matter. By the time you're 40, you're like, oh, you're the guy that was doing drugs through your 20s, and now you see it in your 40s. Or, you're the ones that partied in your 20s and 30s and you wouldn't get a job, and now you're in your 40s and you're like, you're the guy that wouldn't get a job and you're struggling, where other people tend to be more established or whatever. So we see that now, we see those efforts paying off. I think our marriage is better now than it's ever been, because we've worked our whole lives to build that up. And when the family maybe interrupted the marriage, we found a way always to bring it back. So, I mean, we really invested in our family and in each other our whole marriage. And if I ever felt disconnected from James, or if I ever felt like, oh, he has more freedom than I do or whatever, I check myself and say, but this is my issue. If I don't have the freedom I need, that's my problem. It's not James's problem. Or if I'm making a sacrifice to get up to work out with my friends, I'm tired because I'm getting up to do what I want to do.
Right.
It's not because I have to get up.
It's personal choice. Yeah,
exactly.
So
balances along the way.
Right. I feel like I want to ask you a bit, and if you're fine also talking about this, I feel like times are changing a lot. We were just talking about this in our prior podcast about, I feel like it's hard for us to relate to our parents because their times are very different than our times. And so I'm curious about, you have a family of 5 kids. How much do you involve them with, let's say, social media and technology and video games and all this stuff that's very relevant and trending for kids, but it's very different than when
It's
parents
so
or you
crazy.
raised to? I'm sorry, yeah, but I don't know.
It
Yeah.
is. I am only 40, and the way the world changed by the time I was 30, I was
You've
like,
seen it.
whoa.
Yeah.
30
Right?
to 40, I'm like, whoa. So here's my philosophy on parenting, and people may not agree with it, but this is my philosophy, and it's proven to work so far. You can't take your kids out of the world. You can't. This is the
Yeah.
world we live in. You have to arm them to be prepared to face it. So when it comes to things like social media, I don't set any limits on my children's social media. They set them themselves.
Right.
They have their own time limits on their own social media. Well, here's the other thing that a lot of parents don't understand. Video games and social media are social. So my son, who's 11, he can't hang out with his friends that live a half an hour away. But if he gets on Fortnite, he can hang out with his friends and he can play video games.
Thank you for understanding this. Thank you. Literally. Yeah.
Like my son, if he's playing Fortnite, I go downstairs and I'm like, hey, who are you playing with? He's like, oh, I'm playing by myself. And I'm like, that's different to me than if he says,
Right.
oh, I'm playing with Ryan, who he can't play with in the daytime, right?
Mm.
Or if he has friends that come over to play, I absolutely am okay with them playing video games. But my
Right.
son sets these 2-hour time limits that every 2 hours he'll go do something else. So he's an avid trampolinist. He's amazing on the trampoline. And he'll go jump on the tramp for 2 hours and swim and play outside for 2 hours. And then he'll go play Fortnite for 2 hours. And then he'll go hang out with a friend for 2 hours. And then he'll go play Fortnite for 2 hours. So he has set up his own system as an 11-year-old as to how to marshal that himself. But I try to be sensitive to the fact that this is their world. It's not my world. And if they want, like my daughter, my 13-year-old just barely got Snapchat. And what I did is I said, why would you like it? And then I had her older sisters help walk her through what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, make sure the accounts are on private. But I'm like, this is the world we live in. I can't change that. I'm not going to be that 90-year-old that's like, don't develop the land. We can't develop the land. It's like, the world's growing. We have to develop the land,
Right.
So I try to be sensitive to that. And I gauge it off of my kids' requests, off their behavior, off their feedback. And then I just what's appropriate and what's not.
And are they making these schedules that you're mentioning based of inspiration from you and James, or is it like what exactly is it? Because you said you're not really
many kids
placing
aren't
any
balanced.
restrictions or yeah. Are they creating their own? Like, did you give them a sense of discipline growing up, and then they just created the schedule?
I don't know.
Right. It's all right.
It's always been about balance in life.
Balance. Right.
But I don't know if they've just incorporated that, because I didn't create time limits for them. I didn't they'll say things like, I found that when I'm on Instagram, I have a lot of people I follow that I don't really care about. So I'm going to go through and just delete the people I don't care about. But my girls, they don't have these weird issues with social media. They don't have the filter thing. They don't care about that stuff. So I don't have the same dilemmas with social media that a lot of parents do. My kids don't care. They were raised to be their individuals. They were raised to be who they are, to be different from one another. There's 4 girls, right? And they're all totally different. And I've never, ever made them feel like they needed to be like each other. So I think they were raised to believe that they're great the way they are and they don't need to, I don't know, beauty and all that stuff. They're just, they don't care.
I think it has to do with confidence. You basically install confidence into them, and they don't have these insecurities where they have to, use filters to like make themselves look prettier, or like they feel their self-worth is low and they have low self-esteem. They don't have these issues because you gave them this confidence when they were young.
Well, and I knew, I've been a girl in this world my whole life. I didn't want my daughters to become prey to society. I was like, they don't need to tell you what's pretty and what's not. And if that was we would go to church and they'd have on this hideous, fluffy dress they had picked, like Elmo socks. And I was like, you can wear whatever you want. You be you. If you want to wear Elmo socks to church with your fluffy Easter dress, you do it. And if you want to wear clothes that don't match, I don't care. If you want to wear that shirt with that pants, you wear what you like. Don't let anybody tell you that you have to match your clothes. And of course, that's within boundaries, because they needed to dress up for church. They needed to dress up for events. But it was still, letting them choose. I've always allowed them to choose for themselves. I've never made decisions for them. I've always allowed them to choose. So coming to, adulthood and late teenager years, they're making their own choices. They're doing their own things. They don't need me to coddle them because they're going to go out into the world and be on their own, but they'll be prepared.
I think it's amazing they're making their own choices. And I do think, though, that you need to have a level of confidence and also knowledge to be able to make your own choices, right? Or else you're going to make bad choices.
Definitely.
So I want to ask you a little bit about confidence, as we were talking about it. How important is it to be confident in what you're doing? I mean, the 100 triathlons, were you ultimately confident this is going to be a huge hit? Do you have any doubts? Yeah.
Well, let's break this down a little bit. Where does confidence come from? Why does it exist? How does it grow? How does it exist? Like, how would you answer that question?
How would I answer? Where is confidence? I think confidence is like a self-worth that you can accomplish whatever you set your mind to. Pretty much. How about that? That, like, that wrong? Maybe that. Yeah.
So going into a project, I had better feel confident, or I shouldn't be doing the project, right?
Right.
So for me, there was no doubt in my mind, even for 1 second, that James would accomplish this. My mind was set on, when the speed bumps come up, how are we going to problem solve? So, okay, this injury came up. How are we going to address this issue? Not, oh no. And a lot of people are looking for a reason to quit. Oh no, there's an injury. I guess we better quit. That was never an option for us. It was always, okay, so how are we going to adapt? How are we going to adapt? And I think that was the hardest part of the entire journey, was there was never a routine. Every day was totally different, and it was constant adaptation. I mean, from the weather to James's mood, to the people who showed up, to the food he wanted, to the time he was going to bed or the time he was finishing. The only constant was that he started at 5:30 every morning. Other than that, everything was all over the place. So I never doubted. My mind was always set on problem resolution. How are we going to address this issue when it comes up? How are we going to fix this? Who's the right teammate to pop in? So I never doubted, never. And neither did he. He just always thought, I hope this is worth it. He knew he could do it. Just like, oh, I hope it's worth it. This is miserable.
That's amazing, right? That's very strong. I mean, that's an Ironman level of confidence. I feel like I know it's like, yes, you want to do the plan and you have the vision and you want to do it, but also you're just human. I feel like, I don't know, sometimes I deal with stuff where I'm like, is everything, worth it? Am I going to reach success with what I'm doing? I don't, just feel not confident. But when I do feel confident, it's an amazing feeling. And I do think a lot of that is tied with like physical kind of accomplishments, because when I am working out and doing things that are very physical and accomplishing huge physical tasks, right? The crazy workout. That's when I really feel the most like inspired and excited and energetic and creative. That's strange because it's physical, right? You think that just doing something physical would make you tired, but it has the opposite effect on you. Do you have an experience with that, and any thoughts on that?
Well, that was part of this journey, was
right.
Empowering other people to feel just that. So when you have random people joining in and doing their first marathon or their full distance triathlon, I mean, there was a guy, our friend Takashi, he had never swam in his life, and he ended up doing a full triathlon, a whole thing. And he came out, we made all these new friends because they were regulars that just started coming out all the time because they just couldn't get enough of this energy, right? This energy of like, I can do anything. And these guys were killing it. We had a guy that did his first race in November, a full distance triathlon in Florida. It was actually an Ironman. And he did 18 of them with James. And this guy had never, he'd done one race just months before we started, and he did 18. Wow. Who does 18? And our friend Bart did 17. I mean, these people are doing things they thought they could never do. There's this guy named Alex, who on the 50, my daughter was 12, Lucy, she did the 5K every day. So she did 55Ks in 50 states in 50 days, and she was 12. So he was totally empowered by that, and he decided to do a 5K a day. So he started doing the same thing. Well, he came out for the 100 and he did his first marathon, this guy Alex. And he did a full marathon, and he started hours before James on the run because he knew it would take him forever. And he just bawled at the finish line. That's wherein lies all this power. That's what makes this project so beautiful and so special. It's not about James finishing. It's about all the people we gathered along the way, that they found their heart. They rediscovered like what they could do to kill it at life. And it started with a physical feat. So now they transfer that into their life, into their other goals and their other aspirations. Like, we've got these human beings that are ready to make this world an amazing place.
Wow. I'm so inspired.
Hey, that's beautifully put there, right there.
Yeah. No, very, very, yeah. I'm so inspired. It is so cool that, I mean, people are so full of potential. And that we're doing this podcast, meeting all these people around the world, seeing that we are full of so much potential. And it breaks my heart to see people that are squandering their potential. As being like having all these values and having these thoughts and perspectives on the world, it's very different than a lot of people, right? A lot of people just live normal lives where they aren't doing Ironmans and doing huge achievements and
clock in and clock out, right?
Right, clock in, clock out, small talk, zombified mode. Have you ever had an experience where someone changes their mind or snaps out of something like that? And
every day.
Wow.
Every day.
Yeah.
It's one conversation like the one I'm having with you right now that you go, huh?
Wait a second.
You know,
Yeah.
Even at the grocery store,
Really?
the checker seems a little down, and I'm like, ooh, I'm going to cheer this person up, and I sit and have a conversation with them, and all of a sudden they're standing a little taller. But we get emails every day from people that are like, this has changed my life. And again, we don't care about the 100. It's not about us finishing the 100. If you do great things, who cares if it doesn't do something to benefit others? So James doing this whole thing is like, what do you do? Some guy who's really great. But if I suck, who cares what he does? No, we have to convince you that you don't suck, that you are amazing, and that you can go kill it. So we get emails every day from people that are just like, this made me realize that I can do this. And that's why this timing coming out of COVID was so important, because people were demolished last year. And we're like, we have got to pep them back up and say, let's get it. Let's change the world one happy person at a time. And then it changes these generations, and it changes and saves relationships and marriages and families if they all work together for, their best good.
And how much has that affected you, like you and your family, with the amount of people that you guys are reaching, the amount of change that you're causing in other people's lives? How is this affecting you?
Well, on a very personal note, I've always believed that God sent me here to connect with people, because I am a very social person. I'm quite outgoing, and socializing people is definitely my strength. And so I've always believed that that's why I'm here. But when you're raising a bunch of little kids, it doesn't feel like that's always happening. And of course you're investing that later they're going to go into the world and make the world a better place. But it's kind of cool now that I'm older and my kids are older to kind of transfer that to people outside of just, my reach and who I can touch in my community, and to know that anybody that has been touched by our story is changing their life. It's a beautiful thing to know that I am fulfilling that purpose on a deeper level than just cheering up the checker at the grocery store. And it doesn't have to be big. It can just be that checker at the grocery store, but it's neat to see it play out. It's really cool.
All right.
Yeah, definitely is.
Perfect. We're kind of running out of time here. And I really appreciate your time, Sonny.
Thank you so much, Sonny. Yes.
You're welcome.
One more thing I wanted to ask you, if I can ask you one last quick thing about a lot of times in sports, things are competitive, right? People butt heads. I'm the better person because I can go this far or do these many things and whatever. But the way you describe it, it's more of a community than a competition. How did you develop that kind of mindset? Because sports are competitive. That's just the nature of the beast, right? But You want to inspire people to be part of your community. And I feel like we live in a world where people like to compare. This guy's better than this guy, or this movie is better than this movie, or this song is better than this song. But as opposed to there's a lot for everyone to do. So how does that play in triathlons?
Well, I'm really bad at being competitive. Really bad at it. I'm extremely talented athletically, and every coach growing up was like, if you could just take it seriously. And I'm like, why? I'm here to have fun. The competitive nature's never really been in me. And I come from a very competitive, large family, and I never really liked that growing up. But triathlon used to be a camaraderie sport. It used to be the weekend warriors were showing up in their cutoff t-shirts and cutoff shorts on their crappy bikes, and they gutted out. And it was like this reunion. Every time we had an event, it was like this reunion of everybody getting together. Well, that's transitioned into an elitist sport. And it's all the rich people, and it's all the one-uppers. And it tends to be a selfish sport. So it kind of attracts that type of personality. So the sport has changed over the years, and it's actually kind of soured me. I've stopped doing triathlon because I don't like what it's become. But this has given us an opportunity to bring that back.
Right.
Given us an opportunity to say, hey, remember when the sport was about community and working together and cheering each other on? And we had people that would finish with James, but they still had a couple miles to make up because they'd fallen behind, and they'd have to go out. In fact, one guy, Danny, was out till like 2 a.m, finishing up his miles to get the full distance in. And he had 5 people show up to do it with him. People he'd met just during Conquer 100 that all came out in the middle of the night to support him to make sure he got those miles done. And that happened 50 of the 100 days that somebody was out finishing up their late night miles, and people rallied to finish these miles with them. So our whole idea was to bring the camaraderie back and to create community in the sport. And it totally worked. And we're hoping it can stick, particularly in our community. And we're hoping the idea and the concept of it can spread, that everybody can say, hey, we are in this life together. We are in this sport together. We are trying to hit our goals together.
Yeah.
Let's do it together. It's not a competition.
Yeah, amazing.
So
well said.
let's hope we can apply this to like around the world.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Just exercise together, guys, and you all become friends.
Yes, let's all work together and just look for the good, you know?
Truly inspiring message. Thank you so much, Sunny, for coming on the show. Really appreciate your time. This was awesome. I feel really inspired, and I might do a triathlon myself sometime soon. So appreciate your time. Is there anything else you want to shout out or say before we wrap up?
I just have to say, remember, everybody's hard is different. Start with your hard, conquer it, master it, seek out hard things, kick butt at life, man.
Kick butt. Let's
Definitely.
do it. It's been another episode of A to the Show.
Strong quote.
Most international, most strong, most inspiring podcast on the planet. Make sure to check it out and share this if you're inspired. Really appreciate your time, Sunny, and we'll see you later. Goodbye. Adios.
Bye.